take the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Jack DeBrenner. I'm the new president of the board. Doug has met his term limit, so moved on to other areas. Other people here, you've done Katie? Mark?
No, Greg.
Greg Brady, I'm sorry. And then Alan Wilson's our secretary treasurer. Those are the other members of the board. I think you know Josh Curtis, who's runs the FBO and the airport manager. Last October, we're here today because last October presented the results of a 2-year study of the master plan. And out of that, I'm sorry, excuse me, it's the weather. Out of that came questions about how do we arrive to the conclusions that we did. So today I'm gonna turn it over to Nick Brown from CMT, who did the studies, he was lead on the study, and explain how we came about what we did, okay?
Sure.
All right, good morning again. Nice to see you all. I assume this was just, yeah, perfect. One of our takeaways when we met back in October that we heard from you all is we had a couple IOUs. Number one was really how did we get to that process? What was our decision-making process that we got to with that final recommendation? But also there was a specific question with return in terms of the waivers that historically the airport has been able to receive from the FAA in terms of compliance with some of the design standards. So we have, come back with some answers on both of those, and the bulk of the presentation here this morning is really on how did we get there. But to back up a little bit, I want to, kind of satisfy the one IOU that you all had, or question you all had for us was, with regards to a runway extension. Historically, the FAA has granted Warren County Airport what they call a modification of standards, which for short, I'll call it a waiver in this discussion. They've granted those waivers when it comes to compliance with some of the design standards on the airfield. And historically, they've granted those because they've been seen as an incremental improvement on what exists today over compared to what you're going to in the future. So you're incrementally improving it. You're not getting all the way there, but you're getting closer to compliance. So we did meet with the FAA Airports District Office in October, shortly after our presentation to you all back in October as well. And categorically they stated when it comes to considering a waiver or a modification of standard connected with a runway extension or associated with a runway extension or changing the runway in any way, that is a non-starter for them, because it is not an incremental improvement. In fact, it would be a degradation of compliance to those standards. And I've got a slide here later on in the presentation where we can look at what that means and so on. So first and foremost, I wanted to answer that question right up front for you all. Yes, sir.
When we widened it, did we get a waiver to widen it the last time?
I don't believe you did widen it. You was stuck with 75 feet on the runway.
We did widen it.
Yes. Oh, with the 50. No, that's an incremental improvement. And as what you are today, as a B1 airport, the standard is only 75 feet. When you go to a B2, that's when the standard is 100 feet. And again, that B1 is the type of aircraft, the size of aircraft. You've got those aircraft operating today, but not in the quantity to qualify for a B2.
So prior, no, go ahead.
One additional thing, this widening the runway to 75 feet was on our previous master plan, so they had already approved that.
But I thought that was a waiver, that there was some sort of...
That was on the last master plan.
What difference does that make as to whether it's a waiver or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What difference
It's
does
just
it
a
make?
point of that they're representing that this is the only option we have as opposed to we've gotten waivers in the past. So if we change from this plan or deviate from this plan, we asked the question about would the FAA grant a waiver or not if we modify what they're recommending. And so I think they're telling us now, oh no, we went and asked, and since this is the type of improvement we're talking about, no way, no how is what you're saying of can we get a waiver even though,
With regards to once you start modifying the geometry of that runway, extending it, correct. Because again, it is going to be a degradation of compliance to the standards, not an incremental improvement.
Prior to you going to them, had you gone to them about this?
On this issue, no.
Yes.
So we went specifically for your airport on this project.
It was only after our last meeting that you actually
Correct.
approached them.
But as a whole, industry-wide, that is the direction we have been given from the FAA, from the top-down national, all the way to the airport district's office, through all their communication with the industry and applying the standards, you know, in this day and age. That is the direction we were given. So it's consistent with that direction that we had
So,
been applying. to
Commissioner
the state.
Grossman's question specific, did you ask him about this plan specifically, or you just know that this plan fits into this category and you've checked and the direction is no waivers on this type of an improvement?
On
But it-
October, we asked them about this plan specifically,
Okay,
yes. Because they have seen and reviewed the master plan.
All right, and so who did you meet with?
We met with the airport planner.
Do you know his name?
Yes, the airport planner is Robert Tukowski at the FAA ADO, and Alex,
Erskine.
Alex Erskine, who is the program manager for the airport.
Okay, and are these, did you meet them where? In Washington DC? Where'd you meet them
No,
at?
they're out of Detroit, and it was a telecom, I believe.
It was a Zoom meeting
Okay,
for James.
all right, and I take they're permanent, you know, employees or officers of the FAA? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so getting back in, just a quick refresher of what the master plan recommendations were. Additional apron space for itinerant aircraft, additional hangar development to house based aircraft at the airport, a wider space parallel taxiway for increased safety and full-length taxiway, and then a runway that's 100 feet wide and a minimum of 5,000 feet. And the recommended development plan gets to a length of 5,006 feet. Those needs identified in the master plan, again, resulted in what our preferred development plan is, and you can see it's a full-length parallel taxiway on the west side of runway 119. Development of an itinerant apron and new hangars, new aircraft hangars on the recently purchased WCA Fields property. A runway extension that gets us to 5,006 feet, and a realignment of Green Tree Road are the highlights, really, the big things there. So how did we get there? General 5-step process. We started off with conceptual layouts. Took those conceptual layouts that we developed 72 of, ran them through a very high-level qualitative analysis, looking at their attributes very qualitatively. That resulted in a short list that we were then able to refine, add greater detail, better understand what the impacts of them were, quantify some of those impacts, then ran that through a more detailed evaluation, which ultimately yielded that recommended conceptual plan. So like I said, we developed a total of we looked at 72 different alignments of a runway. Different lengths of 4,800 feet up to 6,500 feet in length. We looked at many different approach minimums.
and currently it's 4,500?
Yes, sir. And the reason being we looked from 48 to 65 is the runway, when we ran the requirements as part of the master plan, that was the range based on the types of aircraft and the stage lengths and the distances they're going. A need from anywhere from 4,800 feet to 6,500 feet. So that level 1 evaluation, we had a workshop with the airport board. And again, very qualitative. We used a red, amber, green analysis, red bad, green good, and yellow somewhere in between. Ran that through on all 72 concepts, came up with a short list of these 4 concepts. So the first one is an extension, both north and south, at 5,000 feet. We have an extension just to the north of 5,000 feet. We have an extension just to the south of 5,000 feet. And then the last one is a counterclockwise rotation with an intersection on the north runway, or on the existing runway, somewhere towards the north end. So once we had that short list, we were then able, again, like I said, add a little bit more granularity, understand and refine those concepts, understand some of the impacts that they have. So alternative 1, as I said, was an extension both north and south. So you still have the impacts to Green Tree Road, whether that's to a tunnel or some other impact. But we also have impacts to the north as well, where we're gonna need to buy property, for safety areas. We still have easements up there, so we're able to leverage the easements that we already have, but you still, because we're extending north, the safety areas must be owned, not just an easement. So we have, a total, at this point, 2 properties that are gonna need to be acquired. But we do achieve 5,000 feet, this one's just under 5,300 feet.
Well, so your first alternative was all the way up to 5,300? Why didn't you map it out to be 5,006 feet?
5,006 feet, so we started, and I'll get to that one here in a minute when we get to what ultimately was the recommended. Once we started adding in some of the other details, that ultimately reduced down, but we did not get below our critical threshold of 5,000. So when we start accounting for the realignment of Green Tree Road and not impacting any parcels further south, that's when we start bringing that in a little bit.
Clearly, one of the concerns is the realignment of Green Tree Road and trying to avoid that. So
Yes.
my question relates to adding a little bit of length to the south, a little bit of length to the north from 4,500, basically an extra 500 feet. Why, on this alternative where you're doing some on both ends, why did you say it's gotta go to over 5,200 feet as opposed to 5,006?
In this case, as it was drawn, we were maximizing the length we could achieve without impacting additional properties. So at a minimum, we were to get to that 5,000 feet, we're gonna impact 2 properties in this case.
Well, you just said,
We didn't wanna go further.
well, you just said we wanted to get it to the maximum length. I thought that in some ways, what we're trying to accomplish is getting it into a different category, which is 5,000 feet.
Correct. But again, if we're going to impact, to get to 5,000 in this particular alternative, to get to 5,000 feet, we have to impact a minimum of 2 properties.
Even
Why
if
would
you
we
just,
not
even if you were just doing it to 5,000
Yes,
as
sir.
opposed to 5,200 and something?
By going north and south, in this case, yes, we would impact at least 2 properties. So if we're gonna impact 2 properties, let's maximize what we can get for it, was the concept or the thinking behind
You're
it.
saying if you were just doing 5,000 feet, you would still be impacting 2 properties?
Yes, sir.
Would you still be requiring the realignment of the road with that extra
So at this stage of.
257 feet? or
Yeah,
whatever?
yes, I mean, in this stage of the master plan, the thinking was we would be tunneling. At this point, we have not yet met with the county engineer. That followed here at the end of this phase of the evaluation. And I've got, as a result of that, we came up with different options of what that meant, and I've got those here in a moment.
Can you go back to the previous slide just for a minute?
Yes, sir.
again? So under this one, you're extending the runway south by 619 feet
Yes,
and north by 149 feet.
yes.
And if you took off and just did it to 5,000 feet, you would lop off what, how many, 281 feet?
Yes.
257.
261.
Okay, something like that. So if you took off the area you're extending to the south, and you took off that extra space, would you still impact Green Tree?
Yes, we will impact Green Tree through all concepts, except for one which I have based on a question you all asked at our last meeting. We came back and refined and looked at it.
All right.
That's that rotation.
No, it's actually extended fully north to eliminate Green Tree.
All right, we'll go ahead.
This is, I mean, okay, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit based on the questions you're asking.
Can I ask you to clarify one
Yes, sir.
thing? You keep using the word impact. What you're really illustrating back in alternative 1 was just the properties that had to be acquired.
Correct.
There can be other impacts other than the acquisition to acquire the various protection zones beyond those properties being acquired.
Yes, there could be other impacts for sure.
If you would explain that to them as you go
Yes, and yeah, the term I'm using right now is impacting, but that is what we're requiring to be purchased, either fully fee simple purchased, or, in this case, easements as well. However, in this case, in this alternative one, you already have the easements, but there are additional properties that you need to purchase in fee simple to achieve this concept.
And maybe this could help me too. It isn't merely where the runway is that requires you to say disrupt Green Tree Road. You gotta have this failure zone or whatever, this big green area that you're showing.
Correct, either that traffic.
So in other words, this is a lot, to do what you're doing requires this big failure area, which apparently we don't currently have, right?
Correct, so right now, what that's called is a runway protection zone.
Well, we don't, but my point is, we don't currently have it.
You have an easement over it, right now Green Tree Road goes through it, which is not considered a compliant land use.
We do have it.
We have it
You,
on
you
both
have,
ends.
you have it on
We
both
do.
ends.
But you have to go over the failure would be plain lands or whatever, and it goes right over Green Tree Road.
Correct.
That's
That's
Or land
exciting.
short on Green Tree
And
Road.
there's a vertical clearance that they have.
I'm glad to know that, so I'm not gonna be driving on Green Tree.
But, so that runway protection zone, the standards today stipulate that roadways, public roadways going through runway protection zones is not compliant. But that's the part you have been given in the past, as the runway stands today, that waiver, because the things you have done vis-à-vis such as, like,
So we won't, if we extend this thing, we won't get that waiver any longer?
they will not allow that waiver to exist anymore,
Because we're extending it.
because you're changing.
If we extended it in a manner that it didn't cross Green Tree Road, and then we didn't impact Green Tree Road, they would say, well, I'm sorry, you're extending it a bit, and therefore, we're taking away that waiver.
Correct.
Oh, really? So that's one of the big problems with
That
this.
is absolutely the big problem.
And why is that the rule?
It is, they, getting into, I mean, it's beyond what I know, but actually they have done tons of safety risk assessments, and the greater propensity of deviations and accidents at airports happen in those trapezoids.
Why would that be a big deviation? Because you're already going over a public road for this.
Again,
Failure
but
zone.
the fact the public road is there is the deviation. The public road going through that trapezoid is in fact the deviation from the standard.
And that's what the FAA is rectifying, is saying, if you do this, then we're no longer allowing you to
Correct.
just have the road there, you have to move it
You're
down.
changing
here.
the status quo.
Or you're saying, the FAA's not saying you have to move it, they're just saying, there's no road that goes through there. Your plan to overcome that problem is make this,
Is to remove the road from that area.
Okay, so in other words, the FAA knows that it's waived this all along for these many years. But they've got some rule cooked in there that says if you make a substantial deviation, we're not gonna give you that previous waiver. That's what they're telling
If you
you?
were building a new runway from scratch, they would absolutely.
Well,
provide
that's
you.
not what we're doing.
But as soon as you're changing the status quo, they're applying the same standard.
And what's the amount of status quo change that has to?
Moving a runway end, physically moving the end of, either end of that runway.
And no matter how much it is? Really?
even though we widened it, and that's not,
Correct, you're widening, you're not extending, you're not changing the length and where the aircraft operate.
Well, is the new administration gonna have a change on any of this, you think?
I doubt it, because these standards have been around.
It's just a
Three
question, I don't
administrations
know.
I thought when Obama came in office, the director of the Detroit ADO would obviously change as the head of that department, and he's still there, Jeremy Bateman.
And these are national standards too, I mean, these have been the standards for, at least 3.
Well, what's the curiosity to me is the fact that we are going over a public roadway with this failure zone right now. And apparently, even if we made some modifications so that we would not have our runway so close to the roads, it's the failure zone that could be the real problem here. And they're taking that away from us, even though they've accommodated that these many years. How long have we had this waiver for this failure zone?
As long as RPZs have been, a standard, you have had that, and that they have tight tightened up the interpretation of those standards around about 2012. Was when roadways, public roadways really became a focus of that criteria.
We could just put a sign on the road that says, you know, like they have these signs about how slow children or whatever, which aren't really, the children are very slow, but I mean, their warning is about children. They could have some sign out there that says, watch out for errant planes or something. No,
Fortunately, that does not cut it.
I'm joking, all right.
But no, but the driver of Green Tree Road realignment really truly is that runway protection zone
No, I get it.
and bringing that area into compliance with standards. Quickly, I'll go through these, but, you know, alternative two was another one that this extends north, however, because, you know, we're not changing the south runway endpoint, you still have that runway protection zone going over Green Tree, which in this case, we were assuming would be Tuttle. You have that property, to the south, you also have additional property to the north because we're extending to the north that we need.
So this is the issue of, even if you just put 500 feet only on the north, left the south the same, you're saying we, all of a sudden,
Still
our
gotta bring this-
grandfather status goes away,
Yes.
and they're saying you can't have Green Tree Road there, so instead of realigning it, you came up with, why don't you just tunnel it, which means there wouldn't be aircraft flying right over the top of
Correct.
traffic.
You have an area for which deviations can occur and not impact or strike public traffic.
Was the fact that you're doing something that loses our waiver of this, you know, failure zone that's the problem? It doesn't really, because you're gonna show us lots of configurations of this runway, but it's the failure zone waiver that is being lost that creates the Green Tree Road problem, right?
Correct. I mean, the Green Tree Road problem exists today, but you have that waiver for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, right, but I mean, they're not gonna give us the waiver still. We've had this problem with sightlines for roads before, in this argument with our engineer, et cetera,
Yeah.
where they've gotten waivers on these sightlines, and then somebody wants to make some deviation, and we have to go with the current regulations.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of concept, but, and since you're making a change, they must have some idea of fairness that says, you know what, to be fair, since you were allowed to do this and you committed to this, all this stuff a long time ago, when this was a little dirt buggy road, I don't know what all, they're allowing us to have this waiver into the future, except if we make a more substantial change. Then all of a sudden we have to comply with all the newest stuff. I can't wait till they rebuild out in Hollywood and California and stuff, they have to apply all their rules.
I don't wanna do the planning for that one.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing, we do it in zoning right
Yeah.
now, that there's houses that have been grandfathered in, don't meet our code from a building standard standpoint, and if you try to modify the house, or if the house burns down and rebuild it, you then do have to comply.
Exactly, same concept.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm dealing with that now.
Yeah, sally forth with this. Well, I'm not sure that we can't convince these people, but okay, I hear you, we can.
I would say you would be the first.
Well, I mean, you know,
In this
He's
concept.
we're gonna call up JD and bring him in on this thing. We're gonna see how James David is doing with sucker.
So, the important thing here is now you're inducing, because we're going further north, there's a third property that is now impacted, that you need to.
Meaning we have to
you need
purchase
Purchase
it.
control over, yeah.
I mean, great, I get all of this. At the end of the day, I think what you're hearing is none of us wanna relocate Green Tree Road. So the alternative that moves farther to the north, when you say it impacts one more property, it means we have to purchase an additional property. So we lose then the buffer zone to the south, we're creating more buffer zone to the north, and that seems like,
Yep.
you know, based on what I'm looking at, a much easier row to hoe than relocating Green Tree Road, which none of us wanna do.
Well, yeah, and answer your question here, the alternative to this, alternative to, is if to avoid doing anything to Green Tree Road, you have 7 properties you're going to need to purchase, all to the north. All have homes on them, all have large homes on them. Are not
Okay, so
insignificant.
there's structure on there.
Yes,
Okay, so that's not really realistic. So now we're getting to this whole big major one, which is to tilt the entire runway, So that's being offered up because it impacts fewer structures?
That was one we looked, so we looked at alternative 4, which was to rotate the runway.
Well, can I go back to alternative 2?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get us off that.
No, on Commissioner Jones's point,
Yes.
so if we did say, okay, you're throwing 500 feet to the north, and that puts us into this different category, and Green Tree Road has to be accommodated, you're saying that in lieu of doing this relocation, there is a tunneling that other jurisdictions have done.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying, based on initial discussions with our engineer, they're saying that's a non-starter, we don't tunnel.
They're, not that we don't tunnel, but they were very apprehensive about the tunnel for a couple of reasons. Number one, safety, because it's not just the tunnel. I mean, even with the tunnel, as we got further into refinement and looking at it, it's not just the tunnel. You're still going to end up having to impact and purchase a bigger right-of-way for several of the roads along properties along Green Tree Road, because you can't have driveways coming right in as a tunnel daylights for line of sight reasons. So you'd have to create a frontage road along Green Tree Road to then allow them to enter Green Tree Road further down away from the tunnel. That impacts and causes additional property acquisition. So we looked, and that's where we ultimately, in addition to that, those safety reasons, the operation, the overall upkeep and operations and maintenance over the life of the span of that tunnel is cost prohibitive as well. He was very reticent to take that on as part of their jurisdiction.
And I wasn't meaning, Dave, to try to exclude, I wasn't trying to exclude options. What I was trying to get some insight on is, look, on its face, we don't wanna have to relocate Green Tree Road or do improvements to Green Tree Road. So then what's left in terms of options? And that, you know, it's possible we come back to and say, well, we gotta relocate Green Tree Road if the juice is worth the squeeze. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, like, why do we wanna do this anyway? Like, we're now, you know, we're now in a lot, I don't have an opinion one way or the other at this juncture, but I'm definitely sitting here thinking, you know, what is the, you know, return on investment to continue to go down this path in this particular area? But my only thing here is I wasn't trying to exclude options as much as I was trying to.
100%, I just wanted to thoroughly get that
Yeah.
discussed, that even if we're going to the north, that still basically means Green Tree Road is not in compliance, we're not gonna let you keep it as is, even if you put all the extension to the north.
That's correct. That is correct. I mean, that is this alternative 2, all the extensions to the north. You still have the runway protection zone right over top of Green Tree Road that's gonna require some modification of Green Tree Road, be it tunneling or realignment.
If the waiver's not granted, even based on your discussion on this exact plan with the FAA, and they seemed hesitant,
I wouldn't
not just
even-
hesitant, they said no.
It's a flat non-starter.
But it's really not a different waiver, it's just that we can't keep the waiver. That the modifications mean that we cannot have the waiver any longer. They're using that as the excuse to say, okay, now you gotta comply with our normal regulations.
That's correct.
And it's all because we got this road through here. And I'm wondering what the law is on that, on regulatory requirements where they've given you a waiver and when you are no longer grandfathered in, because there's rules gonna be on that. Now, have we looked at that, Bruce?
Well, one of the things I know, but let me say this to you, they give us money every year in grants, and those grants have assurances on them. And if we don't comply with those assurances, then we're not gonna get any grants in the future. That's the risk. So we either play ball with them or we don't.
Well, we are gonna play ball with them. What I wanna know is what the rules are for waivers and when you don't get the waiver any longer. That's what I don't know the law is, and there is law on that.
And that is well outside of my wheelhouse.
All right, yeah, I get it.
To answer that.
All right, I understood. That's why I didn't ask you the question. Thanks.
So the only real option that, of all of the alternatives, is the rotation option that leaves Green Tree Road intact. there are 3 properties then impacted to the north.
Correct. There are three properties.
And are there structures on those properties?
No, they are currently agricultural. However, I will say, and to Bruce's point earlier, there are other impacts, not just acquisition. By realigning the runway, you're introducing new flight patterns. And those new flight patterns are now going to be, while there are no homes in the immediate vicinity, those flight patterns now are going to go over homes that do not currently experience flight patterns over their homes. So there will be significant negative impact by realigning that, and that is one reason why this alternative is going to perform well. Another one is implementation. To implement that alternative, you're likely going to have to close the airport for a significant period of time to build this, so that.
Why do we wanna do this anyway? Like, what is the upside to us for doing this? I mean, this is just, there's just no good option. I'm not interested in any of them. So why are we talking about lengthening the runway? I get larger aircraft, more aircraft, but like, what does it mean to us?
It's not gonna appreciably change the profile of aircraft that are operating at the airport today. Those aircraft are already operating. It's going to, increase the safety of those aircraft operating today. It could allow for a greater number of those aircraft to operate to a certain extent. I mean, you asked a question about, is the juice worth the squeeze? So you kind of asked that question when we were together last, so I did a little homework on that. And I'm gonna caveat this and say the state of Ohio is updating the study now. It's not available. So based on when they did this in 2014, they did an economic impact study for every airport in the state. And that study indicated at its time in 2014 that Warren County Airport had an annual economic impact of just shy of $13.8 million per year. Escalating that.
What does that mean?
That means the total economic impact, both direct, indirect, through salaries or through folks coming through and utilizing the airport and then spending money in the county, is on an annual basis about $13.8 million.
The fact that we've got an airport at all means that somebody lands a plane there, of course, and that somebody gets out of that plane and stays in Warren County. That's the analysis?
That's part of it. You have fuel sales, you have the jobs.
Okay, yeah,
You have
sure,
the
of
jobs
course.
and salaries that are at the airport. You've got, indirectly some.
We
jobs.
got that already.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the real question is, what does the increase in the length of this airstrip mean in terms of increasing economic impact?
Well, increasing that to today's dollars and based on the growth of the airport that's happened since 2014, that increases to 23.8 million.
Oh, you see, I'm still not getting the answer that I think that Shannon's asking you, which is, what's the benefit of the incremental lengthening of this airstrip?
Again, I don't have updated numbers, but just based on the growth of the airport from 14.
Yeah, but
to
that's what's
25.
not doing anything, so we're just sitting here.
That's a lot of, there was a lot of hangars that were built.
Yeah,
at the airport.
but that's not this.
No,
That's
it's not
a
this.
separate-
This could potentially have even greater impact.
Yeah,
I don't have any-
that's the question, is what is
So,
the
so yeah,
delta?
I don't think you have to sell us, I'm a big fan of the airport. That, yeah, there's a $20 million economic impact as it stands right now.
Yes.
But my colleagues' questions relate to, okay, we get an extra 500 feet and we have to spend millions and millions of our infrastructure dollars, because, realigning that road is a big deal. And that's not FAA reimbursable, I have a feeling. That's our public road. And so we have a $20-ish million current economic impact, and we keep trying to increase activity there, more hangars there. That's all great, but all of a sudden we go up 500 feet. Does that mean all of a sudden it goes to a $60 million impact, even though the class of aircraft really doesn't change? I think that's what we're asking.
It's not, I wouldn't think it will be that magnitude great, but it will certainly increase. Again, we don't have those numbers. Those numbers would only.
And that's where it's, okay, so we get, 20% more activity. We go from 20 to 25 million or something, or
I think-
20, even to 30 million. $10 million worth of more activity, which actually means the return to the county is only a fraction of that. But yet the infrastructure cost of getting us there is going to be borne by the county.
Sure.
And so that's the economic analysis that I think everybody's kind of spinning around in their head right now.
Yeah, and to go into advanced planning, if for this, if, you know, this is the plan, and if we move forward with that, and go into that advanced planning, those are some of the numbers and analysis that would be done as part of that advanced look. Especially once some newer and more up-to-date numbers are out from the state with the study that they're doing now.
But I certainly can appreciate the fact that, you know, when you came here last time, what you were proffering up, I understand why you got to where you got to, because, you know, you start to do this deducing, well, we don't wanna do anything with Green Tree Road, and okay, taking it to the north, well, now there's houses over there that we'd have to acquire people's houses, that's not palatable. Then it's like, okay, well, we can rotate the thing, now we're gonna impact all other kinds of homeowners in doing that who've been there, and because the flight path is on there, so now we're going back to, okay, you know, do we then relocate Green Tree Road, and what's the cost associated with that? So like, I totally get why that was the alternative that you came forward with, having walked through all of this. I still then come back to, you know, does that make sense to do that from a broader question? But I understand why.
It's certainly, through the evaluation, the relocation of Green Tree Road was seen and realized to be the lesser of all evils.
Yeah.
There is no option without impact. That doesn't exist. I mean, the growth in the county has grown up since the airport was built, so, you know, there's no way to get there. By getting to that 5,000 feet, you're opening up to greater amounts of the traffic that has the bigger impacts economically to your county. You're allowing the Fortune 500 CEOs to be able to fly directly into the county to then invest in the county. In addition, the aircraft are buying fuel and supporting the businesses at the airport and that's where you might see that exponential growth is in fuel sales of jet fuel. Whereas, you know, you've got some happening now, you sell jet fuel now, you have some aircraft happening, but it's kind of in that, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, it's kind of just a noise in terms of the overall operation. It becomes more of an actual larger piece of the pie of the operation. So you could have that growth, which has some economic impact to the folks operating at the airport, as well as the county itself through then the fuel tax and everything else that you're getting.
In your expert opinion, is it correlated to solely the length of the runway or with the configuration of that runway, which is not the way most runways are done, with, you know, west to east prevailing winds with a north-south runway? Crosswinds are problematic, and it's, you know, used to only be, what, 55 feet, which was super scary for bigger planes. Now it's 75, which is a little better, but isn't the biggest problem potentially that, because once you're at 4,500 feet in length, light jets and even mid-sized jets can land there in large part. But a lot of it is this 100 feet versus 75 feet that people aren't comfortable landing there because of the crosswinds and getting pushed off the runway. Isn't that a big
It's
factor?
absolutely part of it. It's absolutely part of it. There is a length component as well, especially in terms of inclement weather or not perfect weather. Many insurance companies that insure these aircraft and their operators will not allow them to go in less than 5,000 feet. It seems to be a magic number, even though no one puts it in writing. 5,000 feet seems to be a magic threshold for that, to allow more reliable operation of those aircraft more of the time. Meaning, if it's raining or if there's a little bit of snow out there or something like
Couldn't
that.
we avoid, and again, I hate to cut to the chase, but couldn't we avoid a lot of this if there was a plan to widen it to 100 feet and then perhaps extend that safety zone, the turnaround zone at the end, where technically it's still a 4,500 foot runway, but in reality, there's a bad weather event or what have you, there's an extra, you know, if it's 100 feet right now or two, you know, that we double that. We're not really changing the length of the runway, but the spillover area in case of an emergency is longer. It's basically the taxiway or what have you is deeper.
You're talking about the displaced threshold there at the north end?
Yes, that goes from, I don't know what it is now, 100 feet or 200 feet to 400 feet. Technically, we're not lengthening the runway, but from a safety standpoint, all the pilots know, in reality, I get into trouble, I've got some extra room there.
that pavement is technically part of your 4,500 feet now. So that is operational length for departures, which is the critical number. You know, departing aircraft need more length than arriving aircraft. That pavement right now is part of your runway, is part of your 4,500 feet, so any extension to that is still part of the runway and requires the safety areas to then go with it.
So in other words,
In
you
order for it
cannot
to be usable.
rhetorically rename an area and somehow fool the FAA. That's what you're telling me?
Can't do it.
CIG's not.
Well, but there's a difference in a marked runway and a spillover area, that safety, where planes turn around and do, and you're saying that all is currently part of our 4,500. I had no idea that's the case. So even if we made that area wider or longer, to where in reality, planes do have some.
In order for the aircraft to be able to use it and be able to run it in their payload and range and weight
I
balance,
don't want them to use it. No, that's not my point. I don't want it to be.
then it doesn't achieve your goal of allowing those aircraft longer lengths to operate and get to that.
But in reality, it does if the safety area is greater than what it exists today, and especially if the width is greater than it exists
Now,
today.
you can separate the width of the runway from the length. That is absolutely a project you could separate and do independently from, or sooner than an extension. You could widen the runway. In fact, you know, the airport board had the foresight, and you all had the foresight, when you did replace the lights on the runway, you put a lot of the junction boxes at the width needed for that wider runway, so it would be less expensive to implement when you do that. So yes, that could absolutely be implemented sooner at any time, or whenever you have the funding to do so, separate from the extension. To answer that part of the question, absolutely.
Yeah. Let me go back to a question that's always, I've wondered about this ever since you started talking to us about it. So, right now, we have certain jets coming in, and you're saying that if we lengthen this thing, we're gonna get some other type of jet coming in that brings us an advantage to us, because you mentioned some Fortune 500 jet may be coming in now, as opposed to currently going through Cincinnati or Dayton's airport.
I would not say a different type of jet, no. I would say a greater percentage of the population of the type of jets you're already having would be able to operate here.
Okay,
Meaning-
wait. Let me see if I understand that. You're saying we would, if we extend it, we have more jets of the same thing we've got now.
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
So, for example, to operate at your airfield, several operators have what I would call minimum performance requirements for, to operate in an area. So because of the length, there are operators that we know out there that require, instead of a captain and a first officer, they require 2 captains. That limits who then can come in. You've got to have 2 captains available to come in and land at this airport.
Well,
So-
what is this, so in other words, instead of having a captain and a cook, you gotta have 2 captains, again, I'm joking. but
It's a perception of increased safety. You're adding redundancy and safety and experience in the cockpit to allow them to operate within the safety margins that their insurance carrier or their operating certificate requires.
So you're saying that there are some guys or some companies that are flying the plane that can land there right now, that will come in if we extend this runway to 5,000 feet, but won't come in now because,
They can operate, they're able to operate under normal conditions at 5,000 feet versus at 45. They've got to operate under special conditions.
and so those people that aren't coming in now, but would come in with this, are who? Who is that?
You name it. I mean, there's either the private owners that own the jets themselves, they're the fractional operators like Wheels Up, NetJets, all the different, fractional fleets, they're corporate aircraft, corporately owned aircraft that could come in. I mean, I can't speak to all of them, but those are examples.
NetJets for sure. I just had a conversation with them this week. They can only have 2 aircraft that can come in to our airport. That's the Phenom, and then the Citation Excel. But it's once we get to the 5,000 feet, that'll open up a lot more.
But they're not, so let's take your example. Is it that they can't do it or they won't do
So
it?
the aircraft are capable. So there's a lot of jet aircraft.
Well, are they capable in terms of FAA requirements and all that stuff? In other words, is the decision-making being made by somebody at NetJet or whoever who simply says, nah, I don't wanna do it here? unless you got 5,000 feet. We can, yeah, that's cool, and we've had this goofy, it's emergency zone that goes over a public road, that didn't bug anybody apparently, I don't know. So that's why my question was, there's somebody out there that's completely, will do this, but they're just choosing not to unless we get to 5,000 feet, is that what's going on?
You're right. There's basically, as I understand it, there's three somebodies that are making these decisions. Number one, it's the aircraft manufacturer when they say, how long of a runway is required for you to safely land this aircraft? And what he's saying is that these light to mid-sized jets are capable inside of the specs of the manufacturer of landing at 4,500 feet. So check the box, they're allowed to do it. Part two of that would be the insurance company. Okay, I'm insuring your $20 million jet, and I don't want you landing this jet on 4,500 feet. So do it at your own peril, or you've got to jump through these hoops, like having two captains if you want to operate at a facility that has 4,500 feet. So insurance, number two. And number three are the captains they're the ones that are actually landing it and saying, okay, it's only 4,500 feet, north to south, and it gets windy there, and it's only 75 feet wide. Do I want to land there? So, right, those are kind of the three
captain
parties.
has final say, absolutely.
So those are the three parties, and what they're saying is that we're not trying to, hey, let's bring in, some aircraft that's super large, these big Gulfstreams that are whatever. That's not what they're talking about. They're just saying, we want to increase the traffic for the similar type of jets that we have now, and at 5,000 feet, basically, options 2 and 3, the insurance companies and the pilots are more comfortable doing that, so we think incrementally we're going to get more traffic, and with more traffic means more sales, more people, more hangars, more all of that, which contributes to the economic activity. That's the argument, correct?
That's very well said.
Okay.
Well, I have to say that in the entire time that I was involved with Mason, where we had very active economic development and attracting international companies, nobody ever talked to us about the Warren County Airport, ever, as a factor, or increasing it, or doing something with it. That never occurred. Does this conversation, you guys know, come up with economic development within our cities now as to, hey, if you guys could only extend this airport a little bit, runway, we would actually consider you, or is this a factor for them? Is that coming up?
Yeah, so like the Centos Corporation, they're at Lunkin. I've talked to a lot of charters, I've even contacted multiple businesses in Mason and themselves that have corporate flight departments.
Josh, come on.
Can you get up to the mic, please?
Sorry, I'm bad, like.
So I talked to multiple flight departments throughout, including even like Centos Corporation. Everybody goes down to Lumpkin. So, and it's because of the runway length, so 4,500 feet. So it's not even an option. Also, when they look at the Warren County Airport, we're identified as I-68. So a lot of times it's not even an option because how we're coded to, usually you have to be at 5,000 feet to have like K-Day or K-CBG. Like that's over 5,000 feet like in length. So it's not even an option. So Warren County with our, even some of the research that I've done as far as economic growth and getting that 5,000 feet, I mean, Warren County, we're like the third wealthiest in the state of Ohio and have multiple businesses here. And I think we are strategically located, especially close to Mason, that we would get a lot of like maybe Centos to start basing their aircraft at our airport. And again, that 5,000 is key. And I have.
So what's Lumpkin's,
Lunkin, they probably have 7,000.
and what's Wright Brothers to the north?
So they're over.
They're just over 6. I want to say 61 or 62.
Yeah, something like that.
And Butler
I can
County,
look that.
and Butler County is longer.
Right,
And, yeah, and Butler County is longer as well. And we're not, and again, and I have some data here too that I could share, but we're not the only airport that's looked at what to go to 4,500 feet and to 5,000 and has all these same concerns that you have. And as far as economic impact, is the juice worth the squeeze? So I did some like research and found that, you know, even multiple aircrafts, or multiple airports, just look at Concord, Paget, and they expanded, and now they're doing, you know, 900 million in economic growth from their shorter runway to the longer runway. They're a little closer to Charlotte, but even then, I mean, we could see as far as 700% growth in, you know, fuel sales, because these jets, right now, like we get some of these jets, but, you know, they're buying 250, 300 gallons at a time, whereas piston aircraft, you know, they're 80 gallons total, you know what I mean? So one jet coming in is gonna make a significant impact. And I don't see us, we're not gonna turn into
I
having.
totally get that. I
Yeah.
guess I just, you know, so they don't land in Lunkin, they land in Warren County, and we get some residual sales tax, but they're gonna be driving to Hamilton County or driving to Montgomery County. I mean, I just, this just seems like a lot in order to get additional sales tax revenue on fuel sales, but, I
And
mean,
and I think time is money too for a lot of these
I
executives.
mean, I get that.
Yeah.
If you're a corporate CEO, you
Right.
want all the things. I would like to have CVG in my backyard without the airplanes flying over my airspace too.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have to balance all of these interests where there's finite resources and the impacts on the broader community. I mean, to me, I'm not a corporate CEO and employ, you know, tens of thousands of people. You know, landing at Wright Brothers or landing at Lunkin just doesn't seem like that big of an inconvenience if your destination is here in Warren County to go 20 minutes. But I get the time value of money, but I'm more concerned about the impacts on this broader community. And I just don't, I'm just not convinced the juice is worth the squeeze, but I'm not against the airport. I see its value, but it feels like there is the law of diminishing returns here at play, because it's not like they don't have a place to go. It's just not the place we prefer them to go. And so we want to be the preferred place at the expense of our neighbors.
Well, and I think there's some other impacts or benefits to consider as well. Not just the ability to extend the runway and the increased safety of the airport. It's, you know, but by doing that, we're also inducing some other benefits. You know, there's the ability to expand the sports park, you know, further to the east along Green Tree Road. It gives you another opportunity for another entrance in and out of the sports park as well, which I think, you know, from my understanding, the sports park's been a huge hit and very, very well received and highly utilized. So having that other entrance out of there, all the area there to the, what I would say, the west of the realigned Green Tree Road could potentially be available for that expansion or other development that's compatible with or helps supplement the sports park as well. So those are some other things that are not aviation or aeronautical related to also consider as well.
Well, the thing that my biggest concern about deviating Green Tree Road is we get hundreds, I don't know, thousands of people driving on this road every day. And this deviation we're talking about is gonna be a big irritation to these folks. And this is gonna add time, and it's gonna seem to them to be totally goofy. And we're gonna get a lot of flack for this when we move this road. And I know it's gonna be beyond my time here, certainly, because it's gonna be 10 years or more away, and I'm not gonna be around any longer. But
You
if I were.
feeling okay?
What's that? Yeah, I'm feeling
okay?
fine.
All right.
I'm cool. 10 years, maybe not. That's okay. But you know, the fact of the matter is, I care about the people that are traveling this road every day are the primary users of a public facility, that roadway. Oh, and they don't give a hoot about your airport. And we do, but I don't know what the big, and so the reason why I asked the question about companies, and of course I'm really familiar with Cintas, and the farmers and the Colheps and all the people that have been involved with that. But my issue was that in the times that I have been actively involved in recruiting an international company to come into this area, we've never never had a discussion about the airport. Now, I'm sure that they had an interest in an airport, okay, I'm sure they did. But it never came up with us. Maybe because it just wasn't a factor, okay?
Can I ask, do they even know there was an airport?
Well, sure, they knew where all the airports were, but when they were bringing in their people, and, you know, obviously, and they're international, they're not flying into this airport, okay? They're not their international flights are going into.
There's other reasons for that, yeah. I
You know,
totally-
but they're not, so that was never an issue. Now, with their corporate traffic within the United States, because they had smaller jets, like Dave flies around in, but okay, and that's really cool. And there's a lot of people that do that. I've done that before too. I've flown in and out of Lunken a bunch of times. But again, I've never heard of this being, geez, if you guys could only have a little bit bigger thing, so our two captains could come in there or whatever. I just never
Well,
heard that.
and the reason I asked the question I did, what we hear so often, and you can probably corroborate this a little bit, is the people that are flying, that are the decision makers in the back that are going to where they need to go, more often than not, don't even know an airport such as Warren County exists because their pilots didn't even bring it up to them, or their dispatchers didn't even bring it up to them as an option, because their parameter sheet, they're doing a quick filter. And it's, okay, I need X number of feet, I need this width, I need these services. And if you don't meet any of those, all of a sudden it's filtered out. So they're not even presenting it as an option to the people that are in the back of the airplanes that frankly don't know aviation, aren't aviators, they're just trying to get to wherever they need to go as fast
I
as they
get
can.
it, but to move me on this issue, and I can only speak for myself, to move me, I've gotta see some real benefit to our community with this, that's really tangible, because I can see the problem with moving Green Tree Road and deviating this goofy traffic pattern that people are gonna have to go into now, because we've moved their road that they've been used to, and they're gonna think this is like a big inconvenience for them. And so I wanna be convinced that this is worth it.
So, I mean, as part of, you know, as this process were moved forward, you know, in approving the master plan, is all you're doing is preserving the land and the ability to implement all these projects. Green Tree Road and the extension are only two of the many projects on the master plan.
Are we gonna come in here 20 years from now? Maybe some of us aren't gonna be here any longer, like me, okay? And we're gonna wanna have a much bigger airport. And there's gonna be a different argument. Because now we gotta get it, we're gonna have a real airport, okay? Something like some international thing. I don't know, I'm not being crazy here. But what I'm saying is that, you know, is this incremental change the change? Or is there in the future some really bigger thing?
In my professional opinion, no. This is it?
This is the
maximum.
Because that's not my question. My question is this it? Or are we really looking at something bigger and better and whatever? Or maybe they're gonna have some new technology where they can fly in big old jets and have a lot lower runway. I
Maybe you
know.
don't need an airport.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
Yeah,
just
really,
drop
they're
you at your house.
they're gonna have jets that are gonna all of a sudden, you know, they're gonna flip their engine, they're gonna land like a helicopter, I don't
In
know.
my professional opinion and experience, this is the maximization of the role of Warren County Airport. Given the other airports in the area, given the growth that's gonna happen in this, that's happening already, that's going to happen in the future, protecting for this is, in my professional opinion, the maximized role, the maximized that this airport can or will.
So 5,000 feet is like the mecca, and that's what flips the switch
That allows you
to
to
the
be the best
dispatch.
airport that Warren County can be.
You-
I mean,
And that Warren County needs.
And look, we've been acquiring properties along the way, like, we're not, you know, this isn't a new concept to us, like,
Yeah.
we just
did it.
we just
I
did it.
was gonna say, you've already acquired one of the two properties.
Yeah, like so
We
it's,
acquired two.
Two of the.
yeah, we
two-
just did one, and so it's not like we're again it, it's just, you know, the recognition
Mhm.
that the squeeze is really, you know, it's a big cost.
Understand. And and we're not up here asking for you to bless this plan to be implemented today.
Yeah, you're looking for the master
What the ask of the
plan.
master plan right now is say, you know, we don't see, we reviewed this, while we still have questions that we want to be answered down the road, and there will be many, many opportunities for those questions to be answered as you implement all these different projects via justification studies and the economic impact studies that go along with each one of these projects that's identified. You're agreeing to say, in concept, this looks good to us. We have lots of questions that we want to have answered as we go through the implementation process before we sign off on spending any money to actually put a shovel in the ground.
Exactly, which my point has been, we've sort of already made that decision by virtue of us buying properties along the way. So, you know, I guess from that standpoint.
See, yeah, this is just a different discussion for us, because the three of us are problem solvers, and when something comes before us, we tend to try to come up with a way of doing it, like tomorrow. Like, let's go do this.
Which is a good thing.
A lot of times, we don't really think of the, traffic impact studies or something like, or the access management report. This is kind of the way we're doing things in the future, and it always kind of comes back and bites us in some ways, on occasion. But with this, for 20 years, the plan has been 5,000 feet. The airport's always wanted to go to 5,000 feet. And I think from the public's perception standpoint, it's important for the residents to know there might be some more jets that come in, but it's not new classes of jets. It's not an airport operation. That's not what we're talking about. We're literally, and I was actually going to bring up the Cintas example. I'm sure they would love to have 2 or 3 jets based at Warren County. They just would. But then what does that entail? Probably a staff of 10 or 15 people.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we're talking about, okay, that's great, and then some more employees up there because there's more activity, more sales tax because there's more jet fuel sales. I get that. But
And
what
they're
we're
gonna
talking
hang
about
a building hanger.
is millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer investment in that, and is that worth it now? So that's where we're, I think, struggling with putting on our hats of, we're trying to do this, like, how would we do this? And how can we justify this when, option 4 of what I asked about, this realignment, which was one of the things I heard about because it's a sod farm up there. And I think the original plan way back when was to angle it from a different direction, because it is a north-south runway, which is not good compared to, more.
And I would, to that very point right there, unfortunately, the rotation that to go to the sod farm that we actually, this rotation here, honestly, is the opposite way you would want to rotate the runway based on the prevailing winds in this part of the country.
Okay.
So that unfortunately doesn't help with the crosswinds.
But see, that's part of my statement is just the way it's configured with today's needs, it's not configured well. It just isn't. So I think that's part of the reason why they're saying this is the max we're ever going to go to. And it's a really good point of, I've used this before when we had public hearings about acquiring different things, and the homeowners come in and say, oh, we don't want this jet traffic. Well, who was here first, the airport or your house that's only 3 years old? The airport, you knew what you were getting. I think that's a very legitimate argument. But as Commissioner Jones said earlier, if all of a sudden we reconfigure this, now there's all these new subdivisions in play where there's jets coming over the top of them at 500 feet. And they're, wait a second, this has never happened before. So now all of a sudden we have hundreds of impacted residents that are getting this, as opposed to the ones that have always gotten it, which is really, and especially with what you just said, this doesn't really help us from a wind safety standpoint, then no, that's a hard no, we're not doing that. So now it's just the configuration of, do we want to eventually get to 5,000 feet? Yeah, sure, that would be great. Although you presented all of these factors of land acquisition, and now especially the road of getting us there. But in reality, you're not asking us to solve for those things right now. You're just saying, hey, we want this on a piece of paper, that this is the plan to go to 5,000 feet at some point, and we don't know about what tunneling under roads looks like 20 years from now.
And when we go to do that further advance in the design, in 10 years, there could be some new methodologies, there could be some new design best practices when it comes to roads or tunnels that may all of a sudden bring those options back and that option back into play that could be less impactful to Green Tree Road, or some new roundabout design, because I mean the things that the roadway guys are coming up with are astounding, that all of a sudden you know, the idea of these double reverse diamonds, all of a sudden that you're driving a left, I never would have thought that helped, but they do. I'm not a roadway person.
You are asking the commissioners to bless what the Airport Authority Board has proposed to the FAA, based on their recommendation and your professional recommendation, a update of a master plan that shows the alternative going to the south. And that's what's there now, and and they've laid out, because you asked them to, here's all the alternatives we looked at, but what their proposed updated master plan that's being reviewed in Detroit right now is
It's
the
to the
one
s-
that goes to the south. And the one thing I haven't heard here, the variable I think you also need to think about it, and I'm sure you probably are, is if we don't get this locked in, what happens to the airport? Does it get landlocked? Because we've got a sports park on the west side of the property that we need, and now there's sewer there. And how long is it gonna take before the developer knocks on those people's doors there is no occupation by anyone of that property, it's agricultural use only, those folks don't even live in the state of Ohio. And the Airport Authority Board's assessment was that's the least impactful on the community. So they've got, that recommendation is already there to the FAA. Do you support that or not? And if not, which alternative, if any? And one of the other things mentioned today was nothing. But the nothing approach or any of these approaches may end up causing this airport to get landlocked, and Commissioner Grossman raised it. What happens in 20 years? What's gonna happen here? And we've already bought 2 properties to aid in this. One down on that end, we pay a lot of money for it, just for this purpose, to facilitate this plan.
Yeah, like I'm totally, I mean, personally, this was super helpful to me. While I'm certain it's frustrating to you all, this was super helpful to me because it allowed us to kind of walk through the analysis that you all did to understand why you came to the recommendation that you
Which
did.
are fair questions.
So
Valid
it
questions.
makes total sense to me. And at the same time, you know, what I do understand is when we acquire the properties, when there's potential there, we are controlling our destiny, whatever that is. And so, you know, that's consistent with it. So if what it is we're saying now is if at some point in the future we extend to 5,000 feet, it's going to go to the south, then we're also able to continue to make, you know, investments as the time comes to be able to do that. It doesn't guarantee that we'll, or whomever's sitting in these seats at the time, say, you know, yes, we're definitely gonna do it, but I think Bruce's point is a good one. I guess all that to say, I've come full circle and I'm okay with, you know, changing the master plan to show this, this south expansion while we continue to have millions of questions and discussions about the future of it. So if that's the question before us.
And
I'm
with this
happy to
master
do it.
plan, is it, we're only choosing one alternative? It's not, we want to lengthen to 5,000 and here's the
You've
two?
got to show a plan, and, you know, through the process of the master plan, we would kind of eliminate or narrow it down to this one as being the best available option to us at the time. So this is what the FAA is reviewing and airspace. Now, if you go do another master plan in 5 years, or through the advanced planning, you find, we uncover a better option, we change the ALP. And the FAA reviews it, they say, okay, that's fine, and you go down that route. Again, there's lots of off-ramps as we move forward.
Yeah, because it's just, we don't know what we don't know. And in 5 or 10 years, maybe a significant landowner to the north says, I want to sell, and all of a sudden, we overcome
If
one of
the
those.
reality changes and something else becomes a better option, you have the ability to change the plan, 100%. You'll have to go through the process to do it, but you have the ability to change that plan. Right now, getting this plan approved allows us to protect for what we feel right now is the best option or the least bad option to get to your goals and objectives.
Yeah, I think that's what my colleagues have raised some really good issues, and I think what we're saying is, none of us at the moment wanna realign Green Tree Road. We just don't. All of us are quote-unquote okay with the runway being expanded to 5,000 feet. We don't know what that looks like, because again, the impact to the residents is just gonna be some more of the same. We're not talking about a total, we're not talking about, 737s landing there.
Correct.
It's just some, not double or triple, some more of the same stuff that's already going on that you already experienced. And the airport was here before you were. So, that's been a public goal of the airport since I've been doing this forever, is 5,000 feet. I'm not sold, obviously, on this southern option or what have you, but if you're saying you want to memorialize it now, and then with the understanding that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're amending the plan because technology changed, land opened up to the north, something like that, or the interpretation of the rules have changed to where, wait, we do allow for this, a rural route road to be, inside of the safety zone for landing now. Okay.
Those are all possibilities.
But if we change this now, are we giving up the argument that I want to be able to have this going over a roadway as part of my emergency zone? In other words, like I said before, there are rules and regulations, the law is not a complete ass all the time about, it is a lot of the time, but it isn't all the time. And
I don't think I've ever heard you get somebody laugh.
Okay, okay, so, but I wasn't even trying to get a laugh. But in any event, but the fact is, I don't want to give up the argument with the FAA and the federal regulators that I want that waiver to still apply to go over the road. And so now my question is, if we do something here, am I giving that up?
No, you could still try to argue that.
No. I right now have got a zone that goes over a road, a public road. And what you're telling me is this expansion stuff is, they're taking away that waiver. If I change this program today, if we go, am I giving it up now?
No,
That's my question.
no, you're still gonna operate it.
No. No,
The
that's
right
my
to
issue.
ask for it,
Yeah.
the right to petition for the waiver to stay
I've
in
already
place.
got the waiver right now. If I do this, am I basically saying to them, yep, forget the waiver? We don't have it any longer. I mean, we do right now with the airport.
Not until you go and actually change that runway.
So if I do a new long-term plan with them, where I don't get the waiver any longer, or whatever, the right to use this thing, if they said, it's gone now, and now I can't go back and say, hey, I want to make a legal argument as to why I want to expand this thing to 5,000 and still get that. Because that's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a possibility legally with the Code of Federal Regulations or whatever applicable code there is out there that the FAA is applying to us, that I could win that argument and say, no, you can't take that away. I can make this deviation and I still get it.
I can't allude to the validity of the argument or anything. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, me neither.
I
I am a lawyer, but I don't know what I'm talking about.
But you can go back, you can go
He's on
back.
fire today, he's on fire.
Different level.
I'm sorry.
You can go back to Detroit ADO and ask them that question. The question is, if the commissioners bless the proposed update of the master plan going forward that shows these changes. Your response a moment ago was, if you actually physically make the changes, it goes away. But he wants to know if approving this plan and they approve the updated master plan, does that in and of itself mean the waiver goes away? That's a question you would need to ask them if you don't know the answer to.
Yeah, I say that would certainly need to be a question we would ask. I've never seen that be the case, but it's something we would want to ask.
Yeah, I guess to the FAA, the commissioners, before they adopt this plan, want to ensure that they're not giving up or acquiescing to this decision right now that no waiver, we don't do this. That, okay, we still want to petition the FAA at some point to grant this grandfathered status, even with a modification to the, we just want to be able to ask, even, you know, in the future, to see if things change. If we just, by adopting this, we don't want to give up the right to do that.
Commissioner Young is exactly right on Commissioner Grossman's point. Right now, we're grandfathered. But if we approve this plan, do we lose that grandfather status? Because the law changed subsequent to us getting the waiver. So do we lose that grandfather status by getting an approved, updated master plan?
Well, yeah, in part two, so yeah, our current, making sure that it doesn't affect anything as it stands today, but then also we're not relinquishing a right to go ahead and ask for a waiver in the future to keep it as is.
Yeah, I've never seen them, as is your status quo situation today, I have never seen them remove that, just because your future plan shows it, you know, doing something about it. Holding your feet to the fire and making you do it today on your existing condition, I've not seen that happen.
And at the
Does that
same
mean
time-
they'll change their guidance down the road? I have no idea. I
Sure,
can't-
but
I've never
that,
heard of that.
yeah, so don't screw up what we have now is question number one by adopting this plan, which I think the answer to that is, yeah, they're not gonna go back and say, oh, we're taking away your grandfather status, just because you put something on paper. I get that, but I think that's a legitimate due diligence question.
And in all honesty, if we go and say, are there your existing grandfather status, they're gonna go back and say, what grandfather status? They don't technically grandfather anything. They'll never, it's not in writing, but it's the way that the interpretation and the application of the guidance is. They're not enforcing it, or they're not gonna enforce it until you go and change that geometry.
Yeah, because we've gotten millions of dollars of FAA reimbursements, and they know exactly, they can Google map us and see what it
Absolutely.
looks like. But then part two is making sure that we adopt this plan and say, okay, yeah, we're okay with option one, right this second. And we're not giving up the right of petitioning them to grant a waiver in the future of saying, extend what we have.
Yeah, at first implication, I would say no, you can ask them anything you want at any time, but, you know, that's something we would have to confirm.
Yeah, but see, I'm concerned that they're gonna say, you knew, because you already asked us, that you lost this thing, that you can't use it any longer, and you've submitted a plan to us, where you recognize it. Now, you wanna change now you're trying to get your cake and eat it too, 5 ways
Well-
to Sunday.
Or we just decide we're not gonna extend the runway.
Well, yeah,
and
oh
so-
yeah, all that could happen.
So there's a part you're missing. So as part of the submittal.
I'm missing a lot, I can tell you.
I'm probably am too, don't worry.
Yeah.
As part of the master plan submittal, it's not just the future condition sheet that we submit and they approve. They approve an existing condition sheet as well. And that existing condition sheet shows what you have today, and they're signing off on it, so it's there. That's documented, it's there, that's what you have today, that's the way you operate.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they're gonna take
Yeah.
away our status and say, you can't operate today.
No, we purchased a runway protection zone and they funded it for us in
Yeah.
2006.
Mhm.
And we've operated it ever since then.
That's correct.
Because that's what they directed us to do.
That's correct.
But but now we're giving up, but now the new plan is saying we're gonna go to the south, we're gonna extend the runway, and we're not gonna have we're not gonna be able to, we're not gonna have a runway that intersects a public road. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So we're not putting a runway over a public road and say, everybody in Green can't try to drop because there's a jet coming in. That ain't occurring.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, but so then the question is, if we don't have the runway go over that roadway or whatever, can we still use this emergency zone over it, which we've got now? But now if I say, because I might say, oh, I'm gonna go north with this thing, but I still need that going over a public road, even if I go north, is what you're telling me. And if I go north, which is gonna affect, I don't know, maybe somebody else that's sitting in the room here, and they're gonna say, oh, but yeah, okay, you do that, you don't have the right to go over Green Tree Road any longer. That's the trick to this. And that's what I'm worried about. Because right now, I'm thinking like, if I lived out here, I don't wanna do this big grand, I'm going to the left, and then I'm gonna go to the right, and then I'm gonna go to the right, and then I'm gonna go to the left, and I'm gonna say that that's a minor deviation. Because I'm gonna think that's a big deviation to me every day. And who the heck made this decision?
No, I understand, those are certainly valid concerns. Through the evaluation, though, that was the least impactful.
No, I get it.
option we had.
I completely get it.
To
But
achieve
that all is predicated on the fact that this extension is a good idea in the first place. And yeah, that's not clear to me. I mean, I love the airport and all that kind of stuff. I don't use it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am. It's like, I think having it transparent to say, if, you know, we're gonna proceed, you know, with this, in this direction, which is gonna take years and years and years and money and lots of meetings and lots of decision points along the way, I don't mind, and I think it's appropriate to telescope that out to the broader community and everybody involved to see that, including ourselves as we're acquiring properties and so forth along the way. Just so long as the point you're making, Tom, is right, is like, we don't wanna be, you know, we haven't made that decision, and so we don't want this action to tie our hands into that decision.
Yeah, adoption of the master plan really is, all you're doing is agreeing to advance this for further study as we go forward. You know, it's going to allow us to move into short-term implementation of some of the smaller things, like the apron that's in the midfield, maybe the taxiway along the west side that you've got the land for already, those types of things that we can do in the near term. It's gonna allow us to move quickly into those designs and implementation. The bigger stuff, absolutely, there's gonna be tons of more study, there's gonna be a lot more advanced study, there's gonna be the economic benefit to it, that'll all be looked at to help sell the vision and understand, is this the right vision to achieve? You know, a possible outcome of that is, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, you know, but you've protected the airport to at least continue operating today, the way it is.
Yeah.
So that's really where, you know, the ask of the master plan is at this point in time.
And so do you think you can get the answer to Commissioner Grossman's question, and Bruce's question around, you know, we're not giving up our, it's not waiver, whatever your fancy,
The ability to, I'd say the ability to apply for modification of standard.
yeah.
But see, I want to keep whatever legal argument I've got to maintain the right to go over Green Tree Road with this emergency apron, whatever the heck area it is. And I don't want to all of a sudden lose this because I've submitted a plan where I've already given it up. That's my point.
But it only changes if we actually modify the runway, correct?
Yeah, I get that, but you see, but I might be giving up something important by doing this, because now we've approached them and we said, oh, look, you know, if we do this, you know, remember when you guys went up there and you asked them the question, they said, you're gonna lose this sucker. You make any modification here, you don't have the right to have this little emergency apron go over this roadway. That's what you've already established, right? Yeah, okay? So now we go back to them and we do this modified plan. We say, okay, we believe you. We're giving it up. And that means that, and I'm like, I'm not so sure that did I have to give that up? Because I'm thinking, why can't I extend this and still keep that over the roadway? I'm not gonna take the runway over the roadway. I just want my emergency thing over the roadway like I've got now. And that's what I don't wanna lose. I don't wanna lose the right to not put a runway over that road. Keep the road where it is now, but have that emergency thing going over it. And have them say, oh, no, you gave this new plan where you gave that up. You don't have the right to make that argument any longer.
Couple things.
Yeah,
In order to not have to purchase any properties and homes to the north, we have to get 5,000 feet, that runway goes over Green Tree Road physically. There's just dimensionally, you can't do physically over Green Tree Road. And
Oh,
not purchase property to the north.
okay, so you're saying that's where the entire 500 feet goes to the south?
Yeah, if you look at this.
And that's where that does intersect with Green Tree Road, which means it has to be realigned. The only way we could keep it right now is to do option one, which was some to the south, some to the north,
Correct.
which, yeah, I think, and that's where I was asking about, are we locking in only one option?
Yes, unless you want to purchase to the north. Now, the calculus changes over the next 5 to 10 years, and property to the north is more palatable, or someone wants to sell or slice off part of their parcel and be able to sell to the airport, that reopens.
Which is the way we've done business for
Sure.
decades.
Sure, and there's nothing to say that you will not be able to amend your master plan, your ALP, to then show that to avoid touching Green Tree Road.
So you're just saying, well, it's, you don't know really which option 10 years from now might be the correct option, but there is a mechanism to adjust whichever plan we initially
Correct.
put in there.
Yeah, as things are today, as all the variables are today, this is the best option available. You will have many opportunities moving forward to, as more information becomes available, as further study is completed, as conditions in and around on the ground change, to update those changes.
These
Or-
seven homeowners to the north band together and come to the county and say, we want you to buy us out because we don't want to do this. We say, okay, we buy out those 7 properties. That might change our calculus, so we can resubmit.
But there are several, I mean, I don't understand. There, to the north, there are people that live on the track of that
See these little
airstrip.
parcels here?
What are you looking at?
See these parcels here?
It's all these parcels here. There are homes here. I mean, there's a home here, here. I believe there's one here. I can't tell.
Yeah, all that are parceled out from the larger one. You can kind of
I've talked to 2 of them personally about this, and they're not interested.
I'm not saying they are, but, 10 years is a long time, you
Sure.
know. You just never know what happens. Circumstances change, but
Sure, they do, but they
it's
were
just really a
talking-
hypothetical.
They were talking generational.
Yeah.
We don't wanna sell it, it's going to the next generation. They don't wanna sell it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true.
So, in addition, if you were to show a plan that, with your extension, that did not touch Green Tree Road, the FAA is not going to approve that plan, which holds up all your other projects from them providing any funding for, and everything. So, I mean, you're kind of, risking the whole for the one.
Because we're gonna make incremental
Yeah, and again,
improvements.
there'll be plenty of offers as we move forward to be able to adjust, change, or whatnot.
Okay. So, Bruce, is the question that you posed about the giving up our right been satisfactorily responded to?
No, I think they need to reach out and give you an update on that.
Okay. I'm fine with
You got
that.
a deadline?
I mean, they are under review now, so I mean, things are moving forward with that plan. They're reviewing it, so I mean.
So can you call 1-800-FAA and get an
Yeah, I mean,
answer
it's a
to our
phone call. I
question?
mean, it's a phone call. I mean, Al, I mean, you think we could, a phone call to the ADO on the question?
Sure.
Yeah.
They may not be, we can try this afternoon and,
Okay.
yeah, certainly call them anytime.
But I mean, I guess pending, if that is satisfactorily answered, I mean, is there a feeling of being okay with the plan then, or?
I'm okay with the master plan, changes, as long as we're not giving up our rights to do anything else. I don't have any problem with it.
Excuse me, I'm just convincing with, he's my airport expert, okay?
He's asking with the assurance, if the FAA then provides the assurance that we need about giving up our rights, that we don't give up our rights, are we prepared to move forward with amending the master plan? From my perspective, I said, I'm comfortable with that.
And you want a resolution from the board that says they approve it, support it, what?
I would defer to you on, or the board on what is appropriate.
Well, maybe Bruce, you could work that out once we get the,
Well, it's already there, we're hearing that they could approve it, and that's without you saying
yes,
anything.
exactly.
So, I don't know, I mean, when we have this teleconference with Alex, we need to ask, you know, do you need this? What is it they need?
I don't believe there's any official resolution or anything that they need. It's, you know, is the county supportive of the master plan and moving forward, so.
Yeah, I would speak to that. They don't need an official approval from the commissioners. They would, where they need that is when we go to ask for money.
Yes.
For grants, for specific purposes.
So you really need it.
For
I mean,
this
in
thing-
other words, you wanna know if we'd be into, putting money in and asking for money from the FAA.
Yeah, you're a co-sponsor on all the applications,
But we're really not doing an application
Right.
right now.
because we're obviously very hesitant to go and do it as proposed today, but we don't know what the future brings. But in theory, going to 5,000 feet, for the reasons we've already talked about, okay, that's better than the 4,500, as long as it doesn't have this dramatic impact on aircraft operations, the type of aircraft and the noise levels and all that type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, so you're saying you don't even really need us to move forward with a master plan right now?
With respect to the FAA, I believe that's true.
I would say as a board, you would like to know that the
As a
commission
board, we would
isn't
like to know.
against.
Because if you all say no, we're obviously.
Right, but again, from my perspective of, I'm a fan of the airport, I'm a fan of 5,000 feet. I'm not a fan of doing all the stuff if it existed today, which is where I think we've struggled with the confines of doing it right this second. But if you guys move forward with your master plan, then it's up to this future board of, wait, to actually implement the plan, then we gotta do blank. And we have to apply for these grant monies, and the future board can say yay or nay at that time. So there's still public oversight, but all we're doing is progressing. And like you said, you actually brought up a really important point. With this master plan, we can do some things internally to the airport right now that are safety issues that need to be addressed right this second. And those things, we have the land for it, and you guys can come up with the money for it with the FAA. Those need to be addressed, but yet we need this plan to move forward with some of those things.
I would say the vast majority of the projects identified in the master plan, you would be able to move forward with, without, doing anything that we spend most of the time talking about, Green Tree Road, extension, any of that.
So I think I think you're hearing it from the board. We don't want to give up our rights. We're fine with you guys fixing what you have currently on the inside. Theoretically, going to 5,000 feet, okay, but we don't really, number one, want to impact a bunch of new residents in particular, or really adversely harm the current residents that are there with, monumentally more stuff and louder stuff on them. We don't want that. And we particularly don't want to go move a really important roadway. But that's not going to be our problem. That's some future board's problem of trying to fix that and seeing, is tunneling technology better 20 years from now or what have you?
Can I ask a question in regards to Green Tree Road? Like, we had a fatality last year. I don't know if you're aware of on Green Tree Road. But is it the speed, or are you just worried about just the additional time it would take for the, doing the roundabouts, or, because we've had, like, even, I think even in the audience, we have some residents on the road, and I travel it daily, going to work, and the speed is an issue.
Cause it's 55, right?
Yeah, I don't even drive up to 55, and I usually have kind of a lead foot, I'll be honest, but it just doesn't, I would think, me personally, commuting that every day, that would even help, and I mean, even Mason, you drive,
I
they
tell
have
you what,
roundabouts everywhere.
deviating the road like we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a major change. It's gonna be a real irritation to people. I hear you say that you
Yeah.
drive on it, but
Right.
that to me is you're taking 3 seconds to go straight. Now you're doing this left, this right, I mean, it's just a big deviation.
Because I'm thinking it's only gonna take like 10 seconds. I mean, you go to Mason, they add those roundabouts, and I don't even think twice about it.
I
you know?
disagree with you, but you
Yeah.
know what? I get your point.
Yeah, and I just think, I would think an increased safety and maybe, hey, less fatality, you know, on the road, you know, with light, you know.
Yeah,
on the road.
then every straight road in this county, we could start breaking up with roundabouts if that's gonna be our
Right.
issue. And that's just,
Well, yeah, I'm not saying, that. I'm just saying.
You know,
hey,
if
it would
we
have a
wanted to slow
benefit
people
with it.
down, we
Yeah.
get the sheriff out there more often to
and we don't even
speed check
set
the
the,
thing.
we don't set the speed limit on that.
No, it's
That's-
the
that's-
county, the state sets that.
Right.
And that was, and that being, you know, we looked at many options on, you know, reducing the speed limit, and there's concerns about the ability to even do that. That's where the roundabouts came in, so, because it would not legally change the speed limit.
Well, but from my perspective, I think the board has heard the commissioners. We have concerns. It's not a rubber stamp, but you all can do what you all want to do. It's not like we're saying absolutely not. We never go to 5,000 feet. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be under the right circumstances, with the right juice that's coming out for that squeeze.
And certainly, we or whomever is doing the design at the time and implementation is gonna report back to you, get your feedback, and get your buy-in on on all those major incremental things, especially when it comes to, you know, the concerns you have.
This was helpful. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I know it's one more thing to do, but I think it's important for us to really understand why you landed where you did.
There was certainly logic to it, or,
Not that we doubted that, it's
No.
just we didn't understand it. It's all bad.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we just have to open a public hearing and
Right.
continue it.
Commissioners, if I could speak very briefly to the issue that is currently before.
Sure, go ahead, Jonathan. Since we were supposed to be out of here by 10 o'clock, there's no problem extending it another 5 minutes.
First, good morning, happy New Year. It's nice to be in front of you all. You know, I can go into my argumentation, I presented part of it last time. And I understand that this is the airport's master plan, and these are fine gentlemen who I respect very, very much, and who I personally like, and there's some of them. Some things Turtle Creek does not object to relating to what's being presented to you. The parallel taxiway, I mean, that's a safety issue. We certainly would support that happening as quickly as possible. Additional parking spaces, that certainly makes sense as well, and the related safety issues. Turtle Creek does, and we realize that we are not the approving authority, and we realize that you're not approving the master plan. They're just taking your temperatures, the airport's master plan. But Turtle Creek will object to now and in the future, at least with the current Board of Trustees, to the 5,000 linear foot runway. So for the record, we're putting that in. If you'd like me to make argumentation on that, I can. And as far as I'm concerned, I certainly would put that
I
in
think
the
that's
record.
the open question. I mean, I suspect there'll be plenty of time to make those arguments, because I think they're open questions for all of us.
Yeah, and Turtle Creek has supported all of the improvements in the past. We voluntarily vacated the roadway next door that allowed the 75 foot width runway. Jim Vandergriff, Dan Jones, and I stood out there on that property, and we said to ourselves, you know, when we do this, they're gonna want a 5,000 foot runway, and we said, yep. He said, we could stop it here. Yeah, but we're not going to, because we think this is a safety issue, and so expanding the width of the runway is important. But I just want to put that on record. A, we support the airport. A, we support much of the plan. The part that we don't support is the 5,000 linear foot runway.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard on the issue.
You bet.
And my
Thank you.
compliments to the airport board as well.
You guys don't want to rebuttal that today, do you? Thank you. Well, I know, you know, David, okay, we're good. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, so we have continuation of a public hearing to consider a request from the Myers White Cooper Company. Is that on the table today? Okay, is it continuation? We open the public hearing to continue it? All right, so what's the process of doing that? The public hearing is open.
It was open last time,
It was open last time,
and I
okay.
didn't know it was a public hearing.
So we just have to vote to continue it?
Yes.
Yep,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just gonna move that we continue it, but you have a
Yeah, I have a
resolution.
resolution. The date we're looking at is February 4th at 9:05 a.m. So our resolution is continuing the public hearing to consider a request from the Myers Y. Cooper Company to depart from the official thoroughfare plan.
So moved.
Before you take action on that, if you haven't already, I think we got an email this morning from Kurt, and he was asking that he says if we can move our scheduled, or is that just some internal, you got it?
I believe that's the meeting that he's having with us to go over and review, not the
I
actual.
just wanna make sure we're
Commissioner
getting it right. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
If you don't mind voting, yeah.
Yeah, call the roll.
Okay. Oh, okay, so Mr. Grossman,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
All right. Now, I'd like to see if we can do this. I mean, I know we had this work session at 10:05, but we had a public hearing at 10:30. Can we skip the work session and maybe put that at the end if we're gonna do it, and start with the public hearing?
Staff was probably all gonna be here on the proposed zoning text amendment, and I believe.
And I asked
Doug's-
Candace said she'd only be about 5 minutes, does that still hold?
Okay, so do we wanna go forward with that without going forward with the public hearing first?
I'd say public
We're past time, you can do that if you want to.
I'd rather just do the public hearing if we got more people for that here.
Yep.
Let's do that. We're gonna go up right to the public hearing to consider the text amendment of the Warren County Rural Zoning Code.
Good morning, members of the board. Appreciate you taking the time. We're going to run down through the proposed text amendments to the Warren County zoning code. First slide is pretty self-explanatory. We're here today to talk about these proposed text amendments. The amendments to the Warren County Rural Zoning Code were drafted by zoning and RPC and reviewed by the prosecutor's office. Here's the review process. Back on May 7th, we started. October 1st, we initiated, you guys initiated the text amendments. The RPC recommended approval on the 24th, and the RZC recommended approval on November 5th, and we're here today waiting your final decision. Summary of the proposed amendments, primarily to the solar uses. We add regulations for principal solar. And we define the elements of a solar facility, as well as we included solar in the table of uses, which it didn't previously exist. Other proposed text amendments, we restate the public notification process for various zoning applications. We clarify the requirements for lot width and minimum lot width. We modify and clarify multifamily non-residential access requirements, basically for driveways. And we define and redefine lot, street, and structure. Solar energy systems, here's what we have currently. We changed the definition in the left category. We added accessory. So everything that we have currently remains. We now call it accessory solar, and it's permitted across the districts. Here's what we have added to it: principal solar energy production facility. And then we divide it down by ground, pole mounted, roof mounted, building mounted, or other structure. And you can see for the majority of the ground and pole mounted, it's all conditional use, site plan review, and then the roof mounted
and other is all permitted within the B1 through I2. Proposed language for the solar production facility, we cover all this stuff: lot size, lot coverage, underground, height, setback, screening and buffering, driveway material, decommissioning and removal, road use maintenance agreement, emergency response comments, site plan review, and surrounding properties owners notifications. Some of the key points: you will not be able to have a principal solar facility on lots less than 12 acres. Roof mounted may be mounted to the principal accessory building, shall not exceed 10 feet beyond the roof height. Ground and pole mounted no taller than 15 feet, and then B, 20% or less of the on-site solar. What that means is that if you use 100 kilowatts and you decide to do this, you cannot produce more than 120, or 20% of what you use on site.
But by the
Building
way,
solar-
backing up to this.
Yes.
Somebody has reasons for these various different requirements?
Yes, sir.
Because I would have no idea whether this is right or not, whether it has to be 15 feet or 12 feet or off the ground, this or that or whatever, it can't be more than that. But there's rationale behind all of this?
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay.
And some of it is that we have in our zoning code, and the other is outside entities. For instance, PUCO requires, that's the
Public utilities.
the acronym for
Yeah, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio.
the Public Utility Transport Corporation requires that you can no longer produce greater than 20% of your usage. In other words, they're not in the business of.
Generation.
Exactly, they're not in, so that's where some of that comes from, and it's, that's where most of these come from. Others are stuff that we used based on information that Bruce provided us with current counties that are using this same, rules and regulations. It was just basically a guidance
Okay.
for those.
So we're using other people's standards.
We use it as a guide to form the, what you see here in front of you.
Okay.
Didn't use every exact application, but some of the stuff we did. So moving on, setbacks, 300 feet away from any dwellings. Notification requirements, we upped it from the 500 feet to 1,000 feet. Why? Because it impacts a grander scale of property owners. Definitions that we added to the rural zoning code include the items in blue: small solar definition, solar, and so on. Public notification process. So for the site plan, for zoning amendments, PUDs, conditional use, and variances, we simply have put the 10-day calendar. Sign must be posted for 10 days prior to any of the administrative hearings. That was a change there. Minimum lot width, updates for the residential zones, developmental standards to include minimum lot widths. The underlying theme here was for developers. The old chart was a little bit convoluted. We've, the stuff in red is what we added. It makes it simpler to understand. This is what your minimum lot width needs to be at 50 feet of building setback. Once again, continuing on with that, we changed some of the definitions, and we simply stated what we were trying to say: curved frontage, lot width, maximum lot width to depth ratio. Multifamily or non-residential access and driveways, once again, we don't have a standard for residential driveways. What we would get is calls: hey, where can I put my driveway? And we would refer to this incorrectly. And now we have added the part in red: multifamily or non-residential access. So there is no standard for residential driveways, but there is for the multifamily and non-residential. Some of the other definitions: street public, street private, street minor. The recommendation from RPC was to approve the proposed zoning text amendments. The RZC recommended approval as well, and their comment was define key components involved in a decommissioning process. Mr. Grossman, to your question earlier, in the definition of decommission, we have used someone else's interpretation of that. So it clarifies that once the contract is over, the land is put back to its original configuration. That means
How do we ensure someone does that?
it's through the contract and through, we have
Because
bonding.
what's probably gonna happen are these solar places come in, which I think are, it's kind of a joke now. No, you know, the federal dollars for subsidizing these are going away. No one's gonna be building these new ones. My fear is, okay, someone does build one with some leftover IRA money or what have you, and operate it for 2 years, and they figure out, wait, this is the most expensive way of producing electric. My business model doesn't work. My entity is out of business, and I've got a 15-acre solar panel farm. I'm no longer operating, and I don't have the money to take it out. I mean, who's responsible for that? I guess, could we put a lien on the property? I mean, how do we, you know what I'm saying, Bruce? What happens if?
First of all, the contract between the owner and the solar company would address that. And I've done several in the private sector. I've done a few, actually, not several. And there's always a provision of the contract that addresses that. So optimally, it's there. And if it's not, and they're required to do that, then it becomes an enforcement issue for us, and we'd have to go out and enforce it. And I don't know what that cost would be, and it would be brought back to you. Do you want to incur that cost and then place it on the taxes as collectible as taxes are collected, and if not, foreclose on the property?
But there's a mechanism for us to clean it up if that entity just reneges on the deal and goes away or what have you.
It's a private right of action, isn't it? I mean, isn't it between a private property owner and a solar developer?
Unless it's a condition, unless it's part of our zoning code requirements as they're proposing, as I see this. And if they violate the zoning, then we can enforce it under our enforcement provisions. And our enforcement provisions may require us to put forth the workforce to do it or hire a contractor to do it. And then in our enforcement provision then we can certify that as an assessment to the auditor, place on the property.
Yeah.
And enforce it either way. And the worst case scenario is if we had to foreclose on the property.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I guess, I'm less concerned about that, though. I'm more concerned about, you know, because it's what, we have to prove anything less than 50 megawatts now?
Yeah, on the solar component of it only, this is just small, so it's 50 or less is all we're regulating.
Yeah,
Anything larger than that is the Ohio Siting Board, but you do have an ability to put, my words, like a recommendation in play that the Ohio Power Siting Board is supposed to review.
Mr. Young, so like for instance, one of the conditions, number 16, solar energy systems and all solar equipment that are no longer functioning shall be completely removed from the property within 6 months of the date they are no longer producing electricity, become damaged, discontinued, or broken. Any earth disturbance as a result of the removal of the ground-mounted solar energy system shall be graded and reseeded within 30 days of removal. So we do have a little bit of authority in the zoning code. Ultimately, I think you're right, it's probably gonna be some sort of a civil action or something of that nature if we can't get it through enforcement.
well, I guess, I mean, I'm just thinking through this now, but it's, the property owner would have to be aware, like, what is the awareness of a property owner who's gonna do a contract with a solar developer, that they're on the hook if their solar developer doesn't keep to their end of the, because our recourse is on the property owner, and then the property owner has to go back to the contracted private entity.
Right.
So we just, I mean, with all things zoning, it's, the assumption is people have knowledge of that, but what I guess I would wanna make sure is that private property owners understand their liability in 10, 15, 20 years down the road to enforce on the solar developer that they remove it, or they're going to have to remove it or risk a lien on their property or a taking in their property.
The chart that you had up earlier, Ray, there's none of this is permitted, correct?
Correct.
Unless maybe it's on a roof or something like that, but when
Right.
you're talking about ground mounted stuff, kind of like on the zoo property, for them to go through the process, whether it's conditional use, and of course, that's not gonna come before you, that's gonna go to the BZA and for site plan review as well. There's an application, and the owner has to sign the application.
That's correct.
And that's
along
what
with
I'm
the
saying, like,
application.
I'd wanna make sure that that's really clear.
Okay, well, they hear you, and they can tweak their application, so that they can add that information, and then when they sign as an owner, they're signing that they are acknowledging that they reviewed such code section.
Yeah, because there's only two scenarios. Either they're leasing property, you know, solar company comes in, leases property from Farmer Joe, and then all of a sudden, solar company goes out and Farmer Joe has all this junk on his field. Whose responsibility is it to clean it up? All of a sudden, wait, no, that solar company's gone. They stopped making payments to me last year, and I can't afford to move it out. And so that is an issue. Or number two, solar company acquired 20 acres and it's approved and the whole entity is out of business, and now there's this junk sitting there, and I wanna just make sure there's a mechanism for, okay, they're in violation of zoning because that junk is there and it's unsightly to the community. We're gonna clean it up, and now we're putting a lien on, that property before it's sold, you know, that. I'm just looking ahead of, I think these things have limited life.
I think I think we fully agree with staff, but I think, and we were in a meeting, I think we're just trying to make sure that something is codified, because we've had a few meetings with some companies,
Yes, sir.
and we don't have any current standards, so we'd like to get those in place so that we have some directive we can get to them, because right now, unfortunately,
Sure,
there's
just
not.
whatever standards you're coming up with, I just want you to be cognizant of that worst-case scenario that I think
Right.
is gonna happen, of what if they fail? Who's responsible for what?
Well, and the issue I'm really been thinking a lot about since this issue came before us is with not the residential, consumer of solar that wants to put solar on their roof and sell back up to 20% of what they generate to the utility company. I'm concerned about those solar developers that are, 50 megawatts is a lot. That is a big installation. And what I'm thinking about is the undeveloped tracts of lands that are owned by large corporate or organizations along I-71 or in the lead up to I-71 as they're speculating and waiting for future development to happen there. And this is a revenue generating opportunity for them while they have this, land that's undeveloped. If they, a lot of them are leasing it to farmers to farm, but may put a piece of it in solar, is, that could be tying up that property for a long period of time that may be inconsistent with where the county wants to go with it. And so I'm just thinking about, in those instances, what is the discretion that anyone has to, approve or deny the application. I mean, I understand if they meet the zoning code, then we shall approve it, perhaps. I don't know the answer to the question, but I suspect we can't say indiscriminately, well, no, we don't want this particular piece of property to go solar for 20 years or 25 years. And so that's what I'm really thinking about is how does this perhaps tie our hands in some of these rural areas that are ripe for development at some point in the not too distant future, where we know there are big owners that own this property right now. It's not Joe Farmer.
Ma'am, I would say that currently we have nothing other than 50 megawatts and above. So if we do implement or you decide to approve conditions for principal solar, I think it gives us a little more authority to
Yeah.
ensure. And the other thing that you have to think about is location of transmission lines. So those are the areas that you really gotta be concerned about, because, if you're out in Harlan Township and there's 2 miles between you and the major transmission line, they're not gonna be interested in that land. I-71, where there's major transmission lines, that's where they're gonna be, looking at.
Right.
So with some sort of zoning code regulations for principal solar, 49 megawatts and below, we can at least control what we can't control now. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to bring the zoo property up, but the zoo property is, I reported earlier, it was like 19 megawatts. We met with the gentleman. It's larger than that. I think it was 29 or 30. But that was done under a site plan process, and we're still struggling with that. If we had these zoning amendments, we
Yeah,
could
I
control
totally
that
get the joke.
right at
It
the
gives us some authority to be able to regulate where and how these places go. And yeah, I hear you. I mean, so far, it seems appropriate, but that's the thing that I'm mostly concerned about, is along that I-71
Yes, ma'am.
where, yeah, I hear you.
That's all I have. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions,
All good, thank you.
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay. So now let's go into the,
We have to make a motion if we
Okay,
want to
go ahead.
approve.
Yep.
So we have,
Wait a minute, this is a public hearing. We haven't given an opportunity for anyone else to speak.
okay, so if anyone else would like to speak to the matter of the text amendments to the Warren County Rural Zoning Code, their opportunity is now.
Charter Creek, you're here. You have any comments?
We appreciate the effort of the text amendments.
Okay, do we have to close the public hearing, members?
Yes.
Do you have a
So
motion for
moved.
that?
Yes.
All right, we want to vote on that? All in favor?
so if you are okay with the text amendments, we have a resolution approving text amendments to the Warren County Rural Zoning Code.
Okay, do we have a motion on that?
I thought I did, so
Okay.
moved.
That was closing the hearing.
Oh,
Yeah.
so moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have discussion about it?
Yeah, I guess I'm just, Bruce, you're satisfied with since we obviously aren't expert in this area, and it's kind of a new area to us, you're satisfied with where they landed through the BZA process and everything?
Yes, it's not only new to you, it's new to Ohio.
Yeah.
It just came about in April of '23 that you actually had the authority to do this.
Okay. Well, I suspect we'll be seeing revisions down the road.
Okay, why don't we call the roll on this?
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Okay, so now we've got an administrative hearing. Thank you so much, by the way, appreciate it. We have an administrative hearing for the Union Village Revised PUD Stage 2 in Turtle Creek Township.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Hadila Babidi, planner with RPC. Together with the applicant Matt Albringer, we will be presenting the Union Village Revised PUD Stage 2 plan in Turtle Creek Township. I will present the first few slides, and then the applicant will present the proposed revisions, and then I will conclude with the recommendation. So the applicant is Matt Albringer.
Do we have to, I've been given some instructions on how to do this thing.
Yeah, this is an administrative hearing.
All right, so, do we have to make for the record, the board's clerk has to read into the record certain things?
Yes, so the documents filed in the matter were the application, the site plan, and a letter requesting a review of the revised PUD Stage 2. The legal notice was published in the Journal News on December 22nd, 2024, and legal notices were mailed to adjacent property owners within 500 feet on December 17th, 2024.
Okay. And now, is there gonna be testimony from someone here?
Yeah.
All right,
Bill and Matt Obringer, the applicant, is here, and you need to swear them in.
all right. So if anybody is gonna testify, if you could please stand at this time, and I would ask you to take an oath. All right, so do you solemnly swear or affirm under oath to tell the truth? If so, answer you do.
I do.
Okay, very good. All right, now you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So the applicant is Matt Albringer. The property owners are Otterbein Homes and Union Village Development. The PUD is located along the intersection of State Route 741 and State Route 63 in Turtle Creek Township. The proposed area encompasses approximately 170 acres, and current zoning is planned unit development PUD. So the PUD Stage 2 for Union Village was adopted in March 2016. The applicant came with revisions last year, and it was presented to the RPC Executive Committee in November 2024, where it received the recommendation of approval. And today we present it to your board to receive final decision. So here is a vicinity map showing the PUD. Again, it's in Turtle Creek Township along State Route 741 and State Route 63. And another vicinity map, it's for the revised area, which is located on the northeast corner of the intersection. And here is an aerial for the site showing the existing conditions. So just a quick summary about the proposal. The revisions were made to better align the current housing market trends for the area, and of course the applicant can speak about that more. And also the revisions were made to prioritize preserving the existing stream section in the PUD, and while still the PUD meeting the project goals. So the modifications, as we see on the screen, were made to the northeast corner of the intersection of State Route 741 and State Route 63. And this will be through adding new page to the approved PUD Stage 2 plan, and it will be page 3A. This page will be referenced on 3 other pages of the approved PUD Stage 2. First page is page 3 that includes the general plan for Union Village. Also page 5 that includes the thoroughfare types of plan. And last one is page 17 that includes civic space types of plan. And with this, I will turn it over to the applicant to present the proposed revisions.
Before we do that, does the applicant have any questions of you?
No.
Okay, very good, okay, come ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Matt Obringer with the Union Village Development Company, the applicant. I'll go over the proposed revisions. Really, one of the, or a couple reasons for bringing this forward. This is in anticipation of, we're working with a few groups on the shopping center located right at the intersection of 63 and 741. And we're also bringing forward, or we brought forward to planning a future expansion of the neighborhood for the 21 single-family homes, or phase 2. So along with that, this is broken down into several sides, kind of by thoroughfare plan, parks and open space plan, and the regulating plan. This is showing or highlighting the changes to the thoroughfare plan. As Hadil mentioned,
There's a mic over there if you want to go.
Okay. So the shopping center, this plan actually extends over a wetland creek area. We've added a significant amount of open space, also some open space in here. But from a road and thoroughfare plan standpoint, that would be a pretty costly road to extend past through the wetland over to the shopping center. So that was eliminated. And then I mentioned the 21 single-family homes that's in this area. There was elimination of a street through here, just kind of some value engineering. And I still feel like the grid street pattern, the spirit of the plan remains in place there. And then there was a small modification to the alleyways in this little area here. Thank you. This highlights better just the changes to the open space area. The area along the stream is approximately 10 acres. The area over to on the kind of closer to 741 there is 5.5 acres or so. Our plan is to put a community pool. We've heard from a lot of our residents that's a major an amenity we need to bring on sooner than later. So we've carved out space for that. Did I just click? Okay. So along with adding the significant amount of open space, we've kind of call it a redistribution from a density standpoint. So this area on the left-hand side here is highlighting a T3 zone. That's strictly single family in our master plan. This area to the right, we've modified to a T4 zone, which is a greater zone or greater intensity, however you want to call it. But that does allow for a mixture of some other uses. I went the wrong way. So it gives a little bit more flexibility at duplex, townhome, and live-work units also that are allowed in that zone. I just also want to point out that the T4 zone, everything that we've developed so far has been the T4 zone. So our neighborhood, our townhouses, all of that has been in that particular zone.
And you're requesting that because the market is dictating that?
I do think townhouses especially has been kind of a strong or something that people have gravitated towards. It's been a popular thing that we've built. We've got 14 townhouse units currently in the neighborhood, and I think also there's another slide in here, but we're also greatly reducing the amount of units with adding the open space and electing to do.
So the density, the overall density is not increasing,
No.
but the type of properties that you want to be able to offer is
Yes.
changing, or you're
Yes.
recommending
Yeah.
a change.
So the college campus option, there's I'm gonna maybe jump to that for a second. So this area to the left is what the current plan is. At one point, there was contemplation of a college campus, along with that student housing and higher density and more intense use. So that allows 356 units today. The proposal with the open space and everything else, we're greatly reducing the density to 152, or capped at 152 units. And so that's why I kind of say this is kind of like a redistribution of one block over, one block over, just making that T4, and again, that matches what we're currently developing in our current phase. There are also our density requirements or caps built into the PUD, so we're not asking to exceed the 4,500 homes that the PUD requires or anything like that as well. The shopping center, that area is shrinking again because of that stream and wetland area off to the side. And just another look at that reconfiguration there. I kind of touched on this already, but that, the different park spaces and open spaces that are being added to this new proposed layout. Do you have any questions for me before Biddle takes over? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, before we let you go, and before you come up, I only saw 2 people who raised their hand, but is there any other persons who would like to be a proponent of this that would like to speak? Are there any opponents that would like to speak? Okay, go ahead.
So, again, the plan was reviewed by the RPC Executive Committee on November 21st, and the committee recommended approving the revised Union Village PUD Stage 2. And with this, our staff recommends approval of the Union Village revised PUD Stage 2 to your board. The approval is subject to 9 conditions. All the conditions are the same from the PUD Stage 2 resolution that was adopted in 2016, and you can see them on the screen. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Just wait, does the applicant want to present anything else in terms of documents that we haven't already mentioned that we're considering?
No.
Okay. Okay, do we need to close then the public hearing? Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
And yes?
And let's call a roll on that.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
All right, so now do we have a motion to adopt this?
I'll make a motion to approve with the 9 conditions.
Second?
Okay, is there any discussion on that? Among the board members? Nope. Okay, then let's call the roll.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes?
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Efficient government for you.
All right, now we'll go back to our, okay, that's fine. We'll go back to, Janice, come forward. Sorry, we held you up.
No worries. Good morning, Candace Miller with Economic Development. I'm here to talk to you all today about the America 250th anniversary. Back in May, you may have remembered that you gave the approval for us to go ahead and submit our application, and then we were officially recognized in October. So I just have 2 quick things that I was going to bring up to the board this morning. One is seeking your approval for us to participate in their heritage tree planting. We'll get 1 great white oak to plant somewhere in the county. We can plant it on the county campus. We could work with the park district, find a good location. We decide when and where we would like to do that. So that just getting the green light on that.
I'm all for that.
Yep.
Okay.
We're for trees.
All right. The second thing I have is the Ohio Commission does have grant opportunities. So we do have a project that we would like to apply for, and the grant round closes at the end of this month. We'd like to create traveling exhibits. One would be featuring the Revolutionary War veterans that are buried here in Warren County. The second one would be a work that actually Judge Kirby has been assembling that has just key people, key events, key
Which
miles.
Judge Kirby is that? Which Judge
Oh,
Kirby?
Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Judge Joe Kirby. key people, milestones, events of their revolution, and our hope is that we can partner with other entities in the county to also feature it. So it's not just here at the county building, but that we can have it out at libraries, maybe at chamber events, what have you.
And so is that, are we spending any money to create that?
So the grants are smaller in nature. They're a max of $5,000 per application. The funds will go towards the professional printing material, so no, the county's not gonna be, assuming we get the grant, the county's not
So
spending.
you want
any.
our okay to apply for the
Yes.
grant?
Yes.
Okay.
We got a quote, it's about like 1,400 to do the panel
Yeah.
professional printing, and they're gonna be very similar to like the timelines and the murals that the Record Center has been working on.
So I've actually got a resolution authorizing the Warren County Board of Commissioners to submit an American 250 Ohio Grant Program application to the America 250 Ohio Commission.
You have a motion for
So
that?
moved.
I'll second that motion. Do you have any discussion about it? All right, call the roll.
Well, I guess I
Oh,
do have
sorry.
some
Yeah, go ahead.
discussion about it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I'm glad this came before us because I was thinking about this recently. It would be really nice for us to have some sort of collateral around this designation that we made and has been approved in October. I don't know if it's an update or an add to our website and to our stationery and stuff like that to be highlighting this. This is a really big deal that the state is undertaking, that we're now participating in, that I don't know that that's a ton of resources or anything, but it may be some amount of resources. So I guess it's less about the specific projects that you've submitted that I'm okay with, but wondering if we can get that kind of carried through for this year.
Yes, we have a digital collateral package with like the logo and things, and yeah, we'll put something on the website. Our other thing, we're kind of working, kind of towards the end of the year and then getting going this year is getting some community involvement as well, so that we can kind of feature stuff on our website about things that are going on in the community, projects, events, anything at all that has to do with celebrating the 250th, so yes.
It's like, I'm looking at this right now, you know, what I would envision is that we also have that designation on the stuff that we have for the period of time that we're doing it.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, we have to vote on this?
You did vote, I can call the roll if you'd like.
Yes, we made a motion in a second, I think.
Yeah,
We didn't approve your resolution yet, did we?
we're yeses.
Yeah. So Mr. Grissom,
Yeah, we're
Mrs.
yes.
Jones.
We're official.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
Thanks, Candace.
Okay, good, thank you. Is there anybody else would like to add something? Any other comments? No, thank you so much. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And yes, thank you.
Ooh, coming in strong.
I can